Hey girls, it is week 2 of us talking about trust. This week we are going to look at an example of the Bible where the disciples had to have trust in Jesus, and that is in Mark chapter 4. So if y'all will turn to Mark chapter 4. We're going to look at verse 35 through 41. Last week, we looked at our foundational verse. So if you haven't had time to do that, go back and at least watch the video and read the scripture with me. It was Proverbs 3, 1 through 12. And we looked at what exactly trust looked like. Why did I choose that verse as our foundational verse? To really trust the Lord, not only to direct our paths, but trust Him in all circumstances and everything in our life. Today we're going to look at the Bible story of Jesus Calms the Storm. And you know, it's not really a story. It is for real. We just call them that. But this is when Jesus was on earth doing his public ministry, teaching others about God. And here he is in a boat with the disciples. And this is what it says. Mark 4, starting at verse 35. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." So let's go back and look at the beginning of the verses. Let's start with 35. So Jesus tells them, hey, let's go to the other side. And getting to the other side would mean they have to cross the sea. So they followed him. And remember, the disciples are young in their following. They don't exactly know everything about Jesus and who he is. They just know that they want to be with him. And here they are trusting him and going and following him. So they get into a boat. Notice it says that there were other boats with them. So it wasn't just them. This is a place where I feel like they're comfortable with. They fished here before. But Jesus, again, is in his public ministry. So he's wanting to get in the boat and go to the other side. Not sure why, other than, the crowd was there. So maybe he needed solace and some peace. Maybe it was to get to the other side for them to trust him and for this crisis to happen. I would love for you to share, why do you feel that he asked them to get in the boat? I do believe that ultimately it was to just show their faith and trust in him. But here in verse 37, it says, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. So here they are in the boat. This storm pops up and it is swamping them. It's scaring them. Have you ever been in a storm of life where something has happened and you feel like you're drowning? This same thing is what they felt. But yet Jesus was resting. He was in the stern of the boat. That's the bottom part of the boat. Resting, sleeping on a cushion. And then the disciples woke him and said, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? And he got up and he rebuked the wind, saying, Quiet, be still. The God of Jesus, which is his son, Jesus, who is God in the flesh, who calmed the storm, can do the same thing in our lives if we trust him. Again, he is about to question them in verse 40. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Even though they were surrounded in Jesus' public ministry, they were listening to what he had to say and how our faith and trust should be in God and how he is the way, the truth, and the life. But yet they still questioned. That's an example for us. We still question things, and that's okay. But we don't need to go as far as not trusting God. That's where our fear and anxiety takes over. And I want you to notice that it says in my commentary, it says, whatever your difficulty, you have two options. You can worry and assume that Jesus no longer cares, or you can resist the fear and put your trust in him. They knew who to go to. They went to Jesus. The only thing is they still lacked their faith in him because worry and anxiousness overtook them. How many times can you say that you've allowed fear and anxiety to overcome your heart and your mind? I know I have. And that begins to take our focus off of Jesus. And then I want you to look at verse 41. It says, they were terrified and asked each other, who is this that even the wind and the waves obey him? We should never underestimate the power of God. Jesus has been with these people for 20 centuries, and yet we, like the disciples, underestimate his power in helping us handle a crisis, helping us handle the storms in life that come at us that we're not ready for. They're sudden, but yet we feel swamped and we feel overcome, just like the disciples. How many of us have asked God, why is this happening? Where are you? But yet we have to trust him. The disciples did not know yet about Jesus and his power. They really had not understood, and he had not revealed to them who he really was. But yet we have no excuse, because the Bible is here to help us turn to him and trust him in all circumstances. So this week, as you're reading his word and studying this part of the scripture where Jesus calms the storm, let's remember that in any storm that we are faced with, anything that we feel like that we cannot overcome, we've got to keep our eyes on Jesus. We've got to pray to him, talk to him, and trust him in all things. And I'm so glad that you've chosen to study with us. In the next 10 weeks, we're going to start a new study on God's promises. So keep digging deep, read his word every day, pray for him to reveal his truths, and study along with me.